Hi everyone. This video is about study and learning techniques. So I hope to show you some techniques that you can use while you're studying and learning on your course. So first, to just explain what are study skills. So really they're skills and techniques that you can learn and you can use in order to remember information. So this might come into play when perhaps you're preparing for a test or an exam, or revising some of the coursework that you've done in class, or maybe when you're writing an assignment or a project. Before I go into some of the techniques that I'm going to go through, just a couple of general points on managing your learning and your study time. So if you're taking some time at home to study material you covered in class, or you're preparing for an exam or catching up on reading or research, it's best to break your study times down into blocks. Maybe blocks of 30 to 40 minutes with 5-minute breaks in between. And it's good to give yourself small rewards. For example, after the block of 30 or 40 minutes, do give yourself that 5-minute break. Go and stretch your legs, get some air, get something to drink perhaps. And after longer blocks of study, reward yourself with giving yourself a bit of downtime, doing something you like, watching something on TV, going for a walk. And while you're watching this video and going through some of the techniques that I'll mention, also have a think about your own personal learning style. Are you a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner? In other words, do you learn best by seeing, hearing, or doing? So we have a video as well about that. So check out our video on our YouTube channel on learning styles and use the techniques that suit your style and your strengths. So now on to the first type of study technique that might be useful to you, called mnemonics. Mnemonics is helpful when we are trying to remember certain facts or maybe large amounts of information. It's about using things like rhymes, catchphrases, acronyms, images, phrases, associations. And I'm going to give you an example of about 3 of these. The first one is trying to memorize things by association. This is helpful if you're trying to remember a process or a sequence of events. So you would create a mental picture that will remind you of each step in the process based on using a location that you're familiar with. So for example, in this visual here, somebody is trying to memorize a recipe, and each step of the recipe is in a different room in a house, and that will help them and prompt them to remember which step comes next in that recipe. This is a good one for maybe visual learners, people who like to see what they are trying to remember. The next type of mnemonic is using acronyms is the other one. So using acronyms, this is another trick to try and remember maybe a series of words or a definition or a list of information. So you would use the first letter of each word that you need to try and remember and create a more memorable sentence from it. This is a good one maybe for auditory learners, people who learn by listening. Here's an example here where someone is trying to remember the colours of the rainbow in order. And you can use this sentence, which is a bit more memorable, using the first letter of each colour. So Richard for red, of for orange, York for yellow, gave for green, and so on. Again, another one that is good for auditory learners, but you can see also how you can make it visual. Another option here would be maybe making rhymes. That would help you remember something. And an example here on the slide is trying to remember how many days each month has. So a poem, 30 days, has September, April, June and November, all the rest of 31 and so on. So all of these 3 types of mnemonics and tricks are good for people who learn visually, who learn through listening and hearing, but also people who learn by doing, because you can write them out, draw them out, practice them out loud, and that can help there as well. So moving on from mnemonics now, I want to talk about a technique called SQ3R, and this is a reading and revision technique. So it's specifically used when you're trying to read and remember maybe a piece of text. And rather than just reading the text, this is a more effective way of reading and helping that piece of information go from your short-term memory into your long-term memory, which is what you're hoping to achieve. First, you survey the piece or the page of information that you're trying to read, and you get a general idea of what it's about. So while you're surveying that, or just after you survey it, ask yourself some questions about the text that you think you will find the answers to in that text. So you're questioning yourself. Then you go back and you read the text in full. Then you try to recall the main points of the text, and you maybe might write them down if you wish. And finally, you review the text to check how well have you recalled the main points and how well have you answered the questions that you asked yourself at the start. So a much more effective way of reading a piece of information and trying to revise it fully. Another technique that's quite easy and quite effective is teaching. So you would teach or explain the topic that you are learning to somebody else. You might pair up with somebody in your class to do that, or learn your topic at home and try and explain it to somebody at home. And finally, another technique that's quite useful is mind mapping or spider diagrams. And this is good for all types of learning styles. What this can be used for is if you're revising a piece of information and you're trying to kind of test yourself to see what do you know about it. It's also good for brainstorming and planning an essay or an assignment that you're having to write. So what you do is you start with a blank page, you put your topic into the middle of it, be that the topic that you're revising or testing yourself on, or the topic that you've been asked to write about. And then you start to brainstorm everything you know about that topic. And you put each idea that you've come up with into an arm or a line off the middle of the page. You can add as many ideas from your brainstorm as you wish. You can chunk them into similar areas. You can create main topics and break them down into secondary topics if you wish. You can use color, shapes, highlighter to make it look more visual or to join ideas together. And this can be a really short and easy way to revise information and also to figure out where you would start with writing an essay or a topic. So just to summarize then, it's important that, maybe you can try out these techniques and pick out the ones that seem to suit your learning style the best and see which ones are more effective for you. Whenever you sit down to study, just keep your goals in mind, and that will help you to keep motivated. And what else will help you to keep motivated is taking regular breaks and giving yourself those small rewards. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need some pointers. Your tutor is there to help you, the coordinator of your course and the adult guidance service as well. So please stay in touch. And the very best of luck with your studies and with your course. Thank you.